This is assignment 2.2 and is about the body's response to steady-state exercise. Throughout the PowerPoint, we will look at the cardiovascular system, respiratory system, energy systems, and neuromuscular responses to steady-state exercise. This will be linked to the elite athlete Mo Farah in his 10,000-metre race because he will retain a steady pace and the same intensity through most of the race and be working at sub-maximal level. First, we'll be looking at the cardiovascular system. So steady-state exercise. Steady-state exercise is where the exercise is constantly or working continuously at the same intensity. During continuous longer periods of exercise, your body will reach a stage where the workout is constant and the consumption of oxygen is equal to the demand of oxygen by the working muscle. This is steady-state exercise. This will then plateau. After the plateau, the oxygen consumption will remain the same. This means that you can work at steady-state exercise and you'll be able to continue at the same intensity and speed without getting too tired for long periods of time. This could be up to 20 minutes or longer. Throughout steady state, you'll be working up to 80% of your maximum heart rate, therefore it's not too tough and challenging. When you start exercising, the oxygen demands for the working muscles will rapidly increase to allow to get the oxygen and the energy to allow you to keep going. But after a few minutes, you'll hit steady state, and on the graph, this is a straight line. This means you'll be constantly working at the same rate and the oxygen going to the working muscles is the same. The cardiovascular system consists of the heart rate, stroke volume, cardiac output, blood pressure, blood flow, and Starling laws. So during steady-state exercise linked to the cardiovascular system, there will be a change in these, and most of them are likely to increase when steady state. They're going to level out. Heart rate is the number of times a heart beats a minute and is measured in beats per minute. The average heart rate for an adult is between 60 to 100 beats a minute and can be as low as 40 for athletes. Heart rate changes during steady-state exercise. So the heart rate starts to rise during continuous exercise, then starts to peak a few minutes after exercise. Once the heart rate has peaked, it starts to level off and continues along a steady-state path. This is your steady-state exercise. The reason behind the heart rate increasing is because the demand of oxygen to the muscles is greater than the supply of oxygen that is needed, so the heart needs to pump more blood around the body faster to meet the body's demands. Before exercise, there's the anticipatory rise. This happens because the sympathetic nervous system controls the adrenaline and detects that you're going to start exercise. So at steady-state exercise, the working muscles detect that there's an increase in oxygen required to these muscles to allow you to continuously work at this steady state at the same speed and intensity. The neuroreceptors will detect that movement in the muscles and is staying the same over a long period of time. The impulse of oxygen demands is sent to the medulla oblongata in the brain. This message is sent to the SA node in the heart, where the impulses are sent through the heart and the muscle walls to allow the heart rate to increase and beat faster. This then allows the more oxygen to the working muscles through the red blood cells in the bloodstream. Stroke volume. Stroke volume can be defined as the amount of blood pumped out the left ventricle to the rest of the body in one contraction. The average stroke volume at rest is 70 to 100 millilitres and can increase up to 180 during exercise. Before steady-state exercise, the stroke volume will increase and then will level out once the oxygen demand meets the requirements and there's enough oxygen in the blood flow to allow these working muscles to continuously work at this rate. This means that during steady-state exercise, the same amount of blood will be leaving the heart in one contraction, and this is because the heart muscle stretches to allow more blood flow back into the left ventricle to fill up fully and with a powerful pump to get this blood out the aorta to the working muscles, and this will constantly happen at the same rate during those 20 minutes of steady-state exercise. The venous return. Venous return is the rate of blood flow back to the heart, so this means it's saying how long it takes for the blood to get back to the heart from the rest of the body. The blood that returns back to the heart is deoxygenated. Therefore, this means venous return has an impact on steady-state exercise. So, The factors that impact on the stroke volume linked to venous return is muscle pump, gravity, smooth muscles, respiratory pump and pocket valves. So when a muscle contracts, a muscle pumps help push the blood back to the heart. So if you look at the diagram, the first one means that the veins are slightly narrower because the muscles are more defined and stronger, meaning that the blood pumps in one direction, squeezing through the tight gap. So it happens a lot quicker, whereas the second one, the muscles are not as defined, meaning the veins wider, so the blood flow takes longer because there's more room for the blood to flow, so it's not happening as quickly. So gravity helps blood travel in one direction and get all the way around the body back to the heart. The respiratory pump, when we're breathing during exercise, it gets faster and deeper. This causes the pressure to change, so it helps squeeze the blood back through the heart through the large veins. And the pocket valves, these are valves in the veins that prevent blood backflow, and it travels in one direction to the heart. So what happens is the blood travels through these valves, and these valves are like little gates. So once the blood's travelled through it, they shut to prevent the blood going backwards. Exercise, this means that there's an increase in muscle contractions, so it increases the muscular pump. Therefore, there's an increase in the ability of blood returning to the heart. So this increases how much the heart stretches and increases the stroke volume to allow this blood to flow back to the working muscles. Starling laws. This links to venous return. So Starling laws tells us about the stroke volume and that it can increase as a response to the heart filling up with blood and therefore depends on venous return. Starling laws is the increase in force of the contract of the heart. The decrease in venous return means that there's less stretching of the cardiac muscle, which is the heart, during exercise. This means that there's a decrease in venous return, which is the same as a decrease in stroke volume and cardiac output, so less blood is leaving the heart. Also, Starling law suggests there's an increase in venous return, so there's more stretching of the heart, meaning it's getting bigger, so more blood can flow in, which can lead to an increase in stroke volume and cardiac output. Cardiac output is the volume of blood pumped out the heart in 1 minute, so similar to stroke volume. Cardiac output is measured in litres per minute, and for resting the average is around 5 litres and can increase up to 30 during exercise. During exercise, there's an increase in cardiac output, so at the beginning of exercise, the first few minutes, it'll rapidly increase to get the required oxygen to the working muscles. Once you've hit a steady pace and intensity during steady state exercise, this will level out, and this means the same amount of oxygen to working muscles is the same throughout the time that you'll be exercising at steady state. This means that the left ventricle is filling up with more blood and pumping out more blood each minute to these working muscles to allow you to keep working at this pace. Blood pressure. Blood pressure is the force of blood exerted against the vessel walls. The highest amount of blood pressure is in our arteries, which is the first vessel that leaves the heart. So when recording your blood pressure, systolic and diastolic blood pressure, the top number is systolic blood pressure, and this is the amount of blood that's leaving your heart, and diastolic is the amount of blood entering your heart, and the average is 120/80. During exercise, our blood pressure will increase. However, during steady state exercise, our systolic blood pressure will increase more than our diastolic, because diastolic will roughly stay the same. This means that more blood is leaving the heart than returning back to the heart. During steady state, our blood pressure will stay the same once it's hit that point where the amount of oxygen that's travelling in the blood to the working muscles is the right requirement for the demand. Therefore, it will continue at this rate for the time, and the same amount of heart blood will be leaving the heart whilst the same amount will be entering. Blood flow. During exercise, the blood flow adjusts to allow more energy and oxygen to the working muscles. This is done through vasodilation and vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction is the narrowing of the blood vessels, whereas vasodilation is the widening of the blood vessels. The blood flow links to vascular shunting. So when you exercise, more blood is needed to the working muscles. So vascular shunting happens when blood is required in more places than others. For example, when you're cycling, blood is required more to your legs than your arms. So what vascular shunting does is the vessels that are leading to your arms will dilate and enlarge, so less blood can go to the arms and more will go to the legs. Vascular shunting then means that it stops the blood flowing to the muscles that are not needed and focuses more on the muscles that are being used to allow this oxygen as required to go to the working muscles instead of all around the body where it's not needed. Cardiovascular responses linking to an elite athlete like Mo Farah. At rest, Mo Farah have a low heart rate of 33 beats per minute because his heart's efficient enough and this is the right beat to allow him to get the blood to the muscles for the oxygen required. But during steady-state exercise, his heart rate will increase but not as much because his heart is efficient enough to allow all the nutrients, energy and oxygen that's required to his working muscles to allow him to continue at this rate to reach the demands that is needed. Mo Farah's stroke volume against a normal person during exercise is around 110 millilitres, whereas the average could go up to 180. This is because his heart doesn't have to work as hard because it's more efficient and the supply of oxygen to the body works more quicker, so therefore he can transport more oxygen and nutrients in one contraction to the working muscles because of cardiac hypertrophy, which means his heart muscle is stronger and can force out more blood in one pump. Starling laws will link to Mo Farah's training because the pocket valves will prevent the backflow of blood, so all the blood will travel in one direction more rapidly to the working muscles in the heart. The muscle pumps will help because his muscles, especially his legs, will be more defined, so the veins will be smaller to squeeze the blood through, so it happens quicker. The respiratory pump during exercise will increase his breathing rate to allow the oxygen to the working muscles and get rid of the carbon dioxide. The smooth muscles will help relax and contract the muscles while he's running at this steady state, and the gravity will allow the blood to return around the body and back to the heart. During Mo Farah's race, the blood flow will stay the same because it will be constantly moving to these working muscles, supplying them with oxygen. Okay, the respiratory system. Gas exchange is the process where oxygen and carbon dioxide diffuse in and out of the bloodstream from a high concentration to a low concentration. External respiration happens in the alveoli in the lung. The pressure gradient causes diffusion of oxygen from the alveoli to the capillary, and the pressure gradient causes the diffusion of carbon dioxide from the capillary to the alveoli. So the oxygen comes in, when it's inhaled, it comes in through the lungs, through the alveoli into the bloodstream, where it connects to the red blood cells in the capillary, and from the capillary the carbon dioxide comes out and is breathed out. Internal respiration is diffusion of oxygen from the capillary to the working muscle. It occurs in the respiratory membrane in the tissue. There's a high partial pressure of oxygen and a low partial pressure of carbon dioxide. This causes diffusion of oxygen from the blood to the muscle tissue to allow the muscle to work, to provide the energy, and the CO2 is removed into the blood. The oxygen combines with hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. Diffusion happens from a high concentration to a low concentration. Breathing rate. Breathing rate is the number of times we inhale and exhale per minute. The average is 12 and can increase up to 60, but in steady state will not increase this much. During steady state exercise, our breathing rate increases to meet the demand of oxygen required. This will level out when we provide enough oxygen when inhaling and exhaling into the working muscles to allow us to carry on exercise at this intensity. So when we start exercising, it will rapidly increase because we'll start quite fast, and once we level out at this certain pace and intensity, our breathing rate will stay the same because we are getting enough oxygen to the working muscles to allow us to keep going through the bloodstream from our lungs. Tidal volume. Tidal volume is the amount of air that enters in the lungs during inspiration. The average tidal volume is about 500